To take home the Golden Gloves, you've got to put in the work, and you've got to be tough as nails. Ashley Kalis was driven to achieve. Today, Kalis is still fueled by that same hope, grit, and determination. A mother of 3 school-aged boys and successful business owner who ran testing and vaccination sites across the state. Kalis is the fighter Rhode Island needs right now because it's time for a change. Ashley Kalis for governor.
Good evening, everybody. It's Wednesday night, which means I'm welcoming you to another episode of Chaz Calenda, Attorney at Law, here on the Coalition Talk Radio. I'm your host, as always, Chaz Calenda, and we are here on the Coalition Talk Radio once again, talking about another issue of local intrigue, law, and politics. We tend to interview guests of interest here on Chaz Calenda, Attorney at Law, who can take us into the world of politics and takes us into the world of local interest. And tonight is no different. I have as my special guest tonight, Jane Johnson, who is the, I believe, founder of Survivors Speak Rhode Island. And she is here to talk to us about some of her experiences in the last year and tell us a little bit about herself. Jane, I'd like to say thank you for coming on the show and welcome.
Well, thanks, Chaz. I'm really excited to be here, excited to be able to speak to your followers. I'm sure there's very many, and I'm really delighted to be here.
I'm glad you can make it, Jane. And just as full disclosure, so everybody knows, Jane was my 3rd grade CCD teacher. So I wanted to put that out there. So in case anyone had thought there was any conflicts of interest.
I will not share any stories about what you confessed to me in catechism.
I
Except
appreciate
you ate
that.
a lot of munchkins and drank a lot of apple juice.
Some things never change. So, Jane, so tell us a little bit about yourself. This your organization, Survivors Speak Rhode Island. What is it that you do, and what is it that you advocate for?
So I am. Let me tell you a little bit about myself first. I guess we'll get to that in a minute. I am a graduate of the University of Rhode Island. I have a degree in human studies. I am a retired DCYF casework supervisor, a job that I loved, by the way. I worked for the state for 28 years. Currently, I work for the City of Providence. I am at Gilbert Stewart Middle School employed as a substitute teacher. I was bored and decided to go back to work. I'm a social worker there. I'm a substitute teacher. I keep order in the lunchroom, and I give many hugs to very needy students all day long. I love those kids, and they are the reason that I get out of bed every morning. So cool. That's where my heart is right now.
I'm sure they appreciate that.
Oh, they're awesome. They're awesome. I also own, I am a co-owner of a company called Survivors Speak Rhode Island, along with my business partner, Pasco Troya. And most of all, and I sit here proudly and say it, I am an adult survivor of a sexual assault.
And it was a pretty high profile situation, if I remember correctly, correct?
Yes, it was a very high profile case in the newspaper a lot, but because of the rape shield law, my name was never in the paper. However, my there were headlines that it involved a DCYF social worker, and that was me. So,
And through your organization, Survivors Speak Rhode Island, you've been very open about what you went through in that situation, and in order to help other people who have been through situations of sexual assault, domestic violence, uh, understand that they're not alone. It's my understanding that's the core mission of your organization.
that is the mission. So my company is comprised of Child Survivor, which is Pasco, and I am Adult Survivor. And we have some other people who work in our organization who are also survivors of both child survivors and adult survivors and survivors of domestic violence. So basically, our mission is to generate awareness about sexual assault and domestic violence and to promote healing through speaking, education, and advocacy. So what we do is we go out there and we directly engage our audience and communicate with them on a real personal level. And we educate them about the taboo subjects of sexual assault that nobody wants to talk about. You know, sexual assault is very taboo and nobody wants to talk about it. It's uncomfortable.
It's not a fun topic to talk about, either just the topic itself, the repercussions of going through it for not only the survivor, but for the family members, I can imagine, for everybody who's involved in the situation, and particularly maybe for someone like you who had to go through a trial, the whole prosecution process, an appeals process. I can only imagine what that put you and your family through.
Mhm. Well, we feel, like we are the experts because we lived it. All of us, whether we are, my partner Pasco Troy was a victim of a priest here in Rhode Island when he was 10 years old. And his story is horrible. And it's funny, whenever we go out to talk, I always tell him his assault lasted for a year and my assault was a night. And we always go back and forth when we do, we'll do a little end question and answer at the end. And I always say, but yours went on for a year and it was terrible. And I don't know how you lived through that. And he'll say to me, and yours was a night and it was just as bad. So, I guess we teach what, a real life survivor can teach. You can't learn it in a textbook, but you learn it from us. So we are very excited to be doing what we're doing.
What kind of audiences do you generally speak to, Jane? Have you ever spoken to a law enforcement office, a prosecution's office? Because those are obviously important players in the prosecution of sexual offenders, domestic violence offenders, those types of people.
So we have spoken at many military installations throughout New England. We speak to high-ranking military officers, physicians, social workers, sexual assault advocates, and the general rank and file of the military. I've actually been presented many awards from the military. I've gotten these, and I was looking for one on my desk, but I couldn't find them. I have them somewhere. These challenge coins that they give you. I don't know if you've ever heard about them. So I have received several challenge coins and some, little things from some generals here in Rhode Island, and it's been, really nice to do. To receive that stuff. I've provided training at Kent County Hospital at Grand Rounds to about 100 physicians and nurses and social workers. I've spoken at Brown at the Warren Alpert Medical School to medical students, provided training at Women and Infants Hospital to nurses, where I was able to share with them what happened to me the night I presented at the emergency department and received treatment from them. So they got to hear from, a survivor who came to them in pretty bad physical shape. I've spoken at colleges and universities throughout Rhode Island, sharing my story. I've written a curriculum for incarcerated sex offenders at the ACI, and I volunteered there for 2.5 years teaching an intensive victim impact with my partners from Survivors Speak. My students there, they were rapists, murderers, child molesters,
Wow.
you name it, they were there. And there I was, all 4'11" of me, smack in the middle of the medium security block in the sex offender treatment unit, which I refer to as a sewer pit. I don't know if you've ever been in there, Chaz, but maybe. It's not a fun place to be. But I thought it was important to sit face to face with them, with offenders, and tell them my story. And I wanted to learn from them, and I learned a lot from them. Did I reach all of them? No, because they're a bunch of liars. But I know I reached some of them, and I thought that even if I reached one, that I did my job. So I did that for 2.5 years and volunteered my time twice a week, and I really, really love that.
I mean, Jane, I don't think there's any question anybody listening to you would be impressed and about what your level of engagement is, and in such a difficult subject, and having gone through such an ordeal yourself. Kudos to you for being so engaged in this topic and being willing to share your story and experiences with not only people who have experienced, unfortunately, the same types of things, but looking offenders in the eyes and trying to actually help them, trying to get through to them. I think that's noble. I think you're probably a better person than most people would be who had
I
gone
don't know
through.
about that. I
Well,
try.
yeah, I think you do more
The
than try.
catechism, Chaz. It was the
It
catechism.
must have been, and that must have been, a great example for you, Gene, because I know a lot of people, probably myself included, I probably could not pull that out if I was in your position. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I think that it says a lot about your character.
Mhm.
Um, so I wanted to set that tone because that's going to play a large backdrop in what I wanted to bring you on here to talk about here tonight. Is
But I do want to say one more thing. So
Sure.
you asked me if I've spoken to any law enforcement. So I have actually spoken in 2011. I spoke at an event at the State House with the then Attorney General Peter Nerona when he was the U.S. federal prosecutor. I spoke at an event there for Sexual Assault Month. And I remember listening to him speak about sexual assault and the brave victims that were at this event speaking out when I was one of those victims. And my first impression of him was that he seemed to really care about victims and that he would fight for them. And I felt that he was approachable and sincere. And unfortunately, I have found out that my first impressions of him were wrong. But I guess we'll get into that after.
You couldn't have provided a more perfect segue into what we're going to talk about there, Jane. So yes, Peter Nerona, just as a little bit of background on what you said, did previously serve as the U.S. Attorney for the District of Rhode Island during the Obama administration. So that would have been from 2009 to about when he was dismissed by President Trump in 2017. So it would have been during that period of time where you're talking about. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So Jane, let's go back to last year. Last year around June, I think it was right around this time, if I'm not mistaken, in 2021. You're a member at the Greenwich Club, correct?
Correct.
Yes. How long have you been a member at the Greenwich Club, give or take?
Probably all total, maybe 15 or more years.
And for those of you who are not aware, the Greenwich Club is a private pool club, recreational club in East Greenwich. Would that be a fair description of it, Jane?
Yes, that's a fair description.
It's basically a membership club. You pay to go there. I would imagine there's dues that are owed for members.
Yep, expensive dues.
Yeah. So June 2021. Is there a day in that month that sticks out in your mind, Jane?
So there are actually 2 days that stick out in my mind. The first day was opening day, which was Saturday, June 4th. I was at the Greenwich Club with my daughter and several of my old lady friends. They're all us old biddies sitting in our little circle. We unfortunately, just some Greenwich Club stuff. We had our section moved because they put an outdoor bar where we used to sit for many years. But things are funny. Things worked out. We didn't actually mind being moved because we liked our new spot better. We were under the shade. Got to watch out for the wrinkles. Have to stay out of that sun.
You're doing well.
So yeah, so we were pretty happy in our new spot. So, but the gentleman who he was responsible for moving our spot, was a Warwick police officer, and I will not mention his name. And I was angry at him for moving our spot because we like to sit there. We sat there every day. I go there every single day. I'm there at, for the opening bell at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm there, and I usually spend 4 or 5 hours there every day. So on this particular Saturday, we moved out to our new spot. We were happy there. And I was getting ready to leave with my daughter, Kelly, and I was walking out, and this police officer who was off duty approached me, and he was then the vice president on the Board of Governors.
At the Greenwich Club.
At the Greenwich Club, yep. And he approached me, he said something to me, and I put my hand up to him like this. And I said, "Don't talk to me. I'm pissed off at you." And I walked away with my daughter. Now, if somebody does that to you, that means stop. Don't come near me. That's how I would interpret that. And he did. He left me alone. So I will tell you, I was friendly with this police officer. I can't take this away from him. He did a lot of good work at the Greenwich Club. He was, always there, spent a lot of time there. His kids were lifeguards there. He did some of the dirty work that people don't want to do. So I would always give him credit for that. I had a conversation with him prior to, a couple of years ago, actually, because I was trying to, work on my Survivor Speak business to get our company into the Warwick Police Department to do a training for the police officers. And I remember sitting with him on the side of the pool, talking to him about my company. And I told him my whole history of my sexual assault. And I'm not sure if we're going to get into that tonight or not, but we can if you want.
So you were basically trusted him with some very personal information.
I did trust him. Yes, it's very personal information. And
you made him aware that you were a sexual assault survivor. And, obviously you were attempting to, do some good, go into Warwick Police and provide your services.
And my story is a horrible story. I was injured very badly. I had bruises from my neck down. I was bitten on my body. It was a very traumatic night for me, the night I was assaulted. I had hunks of hair pulled out of my head. And I shared all these details with him because I thought that it was important for him to hear it. Like I think it's important for everybody to hear stories about sexual assault. I'm not ashamed of it. I didn't do anything wrong. I was a victim. So let me make that real clear. I am not ashamed of my story at all. I was in the beginning because that's how victims are. But through my years of therapy, I shed that shame. So I did share, all of the details of my trauma with him. So he was very well aware of my trauma. So I left the Greenwich Club that day and went home with my daughter. And the next day, I arrived at the Greenwich Club about 9:30 because we have to get in line and get our spot because it's important. Plus, I like to stand there with my friends and we all chit chat. We have coffee and blah, 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 and, shoot the breeze. So I noticed one of my friends pulled up to a handicap spot, which is in front of the building. and she's on a cane. So I said to my daughter, hang on a minute, I'm going to run over and help my friend, see if I could carry her chairs in. So I was in my bathing suit and I had a cover up on, and I went over to her car, and I was bending over into her car, and I said, can I help you carry your chairs in? And she said, no, no, my sisters are on their way. And I said, okay. So I was chatting with her. Um, while I was bent over, as I said, I had my bathing suit on. My rear end was sticking out because I was leaning into her car. From behind me, I felt what I felt was a hard grab on my buttock, on my right buttock. I didn't see who it was because I had my back, my head was in the car, pretty much in her window. Did not see who it was, but I can tell you what I felt.
Right.
It startled me. It was a touch on my body that I did not give anybody permission to touch me. It was my rear end. I turned around and I saw the police officer going up the stairs and heading into the clubhouse. And I immediately turned to him and I yelled, "Don't touch me. Don't you ever touch me." And I yelled because I was pretty shaken up. So he turned around and he smirked at me, and he said, I thought we were friends. And I yelled at him in a very loud voice, and I said, and I pointed at him, I said, "No, we are not friends. We are not friends." I said, "You know I'm a sexual assault survivor, and you don't ever touch a woman like that." And he walked into the club. And at that point for me, I had a total meltdown. If you're not a survivor of an incident that I have been a survivor of, you might not understand it. Trauma is really hard to explain unless you've experienced it. So a lot of people don't get it.
Right. And I wanted to expound upon that because, somebody might be sitting out there in internet land saying, "Oh, well, you got a grab on your butt, Gene, big deal. What, how could that possibly, you weren't injured, you didn't do anything. There was nothing else done there. You knew each other, how could that possibly make you as upset as it apparently made you that day?"
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yes, I was upset. And when you have trauma, like the severe trauma that I had, I mean, I told you I was beaten for 3 hours. I told you what happened to me. I had
Right.
bruises. I had hair pulled out of my head. I thought I was going to die. I was choked. I had injuries down my throat. It wasn't a pretty picture. I worked really hard with my therapist from years ago to get to a very healthy place where I could do this work of getting out and helping people and standing up in front of 90 judges in Rhode Island, like I did at a training a couple of years ago, and tell my story. But when this happened to me, it's called flight, fright, and freeze. I don't know if you've ever heard that or not. Fright, flight, fear, and freeze. And that's just what happened to me. All my trauma that I thought I had tucked away in a pretty safe space came back just like that. And I was that victim again. He came up behind me. I didn't see him. He kicked me. Well, actually, I found out in the end, because I didn't see, I could tell you what I felt. But I found out later that he raised his leg and he kicked me with his foot. So that jolt to me in my head just brought everything back for me. And again, if you've never experienced the kind of trauma I've had, and I'm hoping nobody out there ever has to experience it, you don't understand. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I was fearful. I didn't give him permission to touch me. I'm very protective of myself. Still, I'm very protective. So a few minutes after that happened, he went back into he went right back up into the club. And I walked back to my daughter. She was in line, and I really tried to pull myself together. And when you're in that state, and I was in a pretty bad state, all I remember is like some mass confusion at the gate. So everybody has to go in through the gate, and the gate was locked. A lot of people were yelling. Some people had seen what had happened. Some people were saying, "Oh my God, Jane, I just saw what he did to you. I can't believe he did that." And it's just kind of almost like it's like a dream almost. Like you kind of disassociate from it. And it reminded me, looking back now, of how I was when I was in the emergency room at Women and Infants Hospital having a rape kit done, when I felt like I was just kind of looking down at everything that was going around me, and I wasn't really there. And as I've gone through my therapy now with my trauma therapist, she's been explaining a lot of that stuff to me, and it has made sense. Um, Anyways, this police officer came back to unlock the gate, and there was another woman there who was on the board of, she was called a governor. She said, "What you did to Jane was inappropriate. Jane's a sexual assault survivor, and so am I." And in a very cocky tone, he responded, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were friends. Guess not." And then he turned to me and looked directly at me and pointed his finger like this. And he said, "I'm going to bust your balls all summer."
So he taunted you.
He taunted me.
Not only did he violate the sanctity of your personal space, he taunted you after the fact, knowing how upset you were and knowing your history.
And knowing my history, that's for me is so hard, because I couldn't understand that. I'm like, as I've been trying to process this in my therapy, he's a police officer. He's a respected member of the community. My brother-in-law is a police officer. I love the police. I highly respect the police. I call them in a minute if I needed help. But this police officer violated me. He touched me inappropriately without my permission, and then came over to me and pointed his finger, and I was in fear of him.
And
So
that makes sense, because you had, my understanding is that because of your initial sexual assault, you had gone through, you had been diagnosed with PTSD. You had done very well going through the years, going through your therapy to deal with that and deal with all the struggles that comes with, and had got to a point where you had been fairly comfortable with your with your emotional state until this happens. Is that right?
I mean, that's right. I mean, was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, dissociation disorder, and PTSD. I had it all. I was on a lot of medication way back when, and I had, worked through my trauma to the point where I could get up and stand up in front of 500 National Guards, which I did a couple years ago, and talk to them about sexual assault down at Quonset Point.
You said you spoke in front of 90 judges.
I did. Chief Justice Paul Sattel of the Supreme Court invited me to come, and I went to I think it was their 17th annual judiciary conference down at the Narragansett Bay Conference, and there were 90 sitting judges there. And I got to go in, and no, it was awesome. It was awesome. I got to tell my story about what it's like for a victim going through the criminal justice system in the state of Rhode Island, the trials and tribulations, what they could do better, what was horrible for me, what improvements can you make? And I got a standing, I spoke for 90 minutes. Because you know me, I can talk forever. I'm Irish, so I can go on and on and on. But it was awesome. The judges who overturned, so I don't know, we didn't really get into too much about what happened, but So my offender was sentenced to 50 years in prison, with 25 to serve. And then he hired an attorney, another law firm, and they filed an appeal with the Supreme Court. And his case was overturned based on some technical errors that the judge made. So he was released from prison after serving 3 years, 8 months, and his charges still stood. And the Attorney General's office came to me and they said, we want to try this case again. We believe in you, blah, blah, blah. And it ended up that they did not try the case again. My offender pled nolo. He served 3 years, 8 months at the ACI. He is a registered sex offender and he received a 30-year probation sentence. And he resides in Massachusetts and he has an ankle bracelet on.
So let me just make that clear. This was under their different Attorney General's administration, not the
Yeah,
current one.
I don't know who it was. I don't know whoever the last one was.
So now you've got,
maybe Lynch,
well, what year was it? I can tell you.
2003.
So it
Well,
would've-
when the case was overturned, it was 2009.
so that still would have been Lynch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got to speak to all these judges, and I think they were all there that overturned the decision on my case, and they got to hear it all from me. And I said, I am not here to try to embarrass anybody. That's not why I'm here. That's not my game. Like, I have never mentioned my offender's name in public in the hundreds of times that I've spoken. It's not what I need to do. However, that day I mentioned his name about 50 times because I know at some point he will be in front of all of them, and I wanted them to remember his name. So it was a great experience for me, and I know I got a standing ovation after I spoke, and Judge Sattel came over to me and he said, I don't even know what to say. He goes, it was fabulous.
I mean, that's quite an accomplishment in and of itself, Jane.
Yeah.
It just goes to show that you're not some crackpot off the street. You're not some woman who cries wolf off the street. That every little thing comes to offend her. You're a reputable person in this community. You do all these things. You've contributed more to this community by doing what you do than I would say a vast majority of the people. So I want that. I just want to say that that's me editorializing. I want to say that because I think that lends credence and ultimately outrage to about how you were treated when you finally brought this matter that we were talking about at the Greenwich Club to the authorities. And why don't we get into a little bit about what the actions you took after that happened?
So after I walked into the club with my daughter, I sat down and composed myself. And it took me, a little while, half an hour or so. And I said, I need to go in and speak to the general manager. Now, I will tell you this, this police officer hired the general manager.
The full Rhode Island.
The general manager is very interested. I think he's a PE teacher actually in Providence. He's a nice guy. Loves working with the kids. He's a busy guy. So I went in and I told him what happened, and he shook his head and just like in disgust. He said, "He did what?" And he did this, and he went, and he goes, "I'll talk to him." And I said, well, you can talk to him, but I'm going to talk to him too, but not today. And I walked away. I walked out of,
right,
the clubhouse, and then my son and my grandchildren, they all came in, and then I had to, make it like everything was okay. I told my son what had happened, and
So you went through that, and then how long was it after that you decided that you needed to do something about this?
Well, I came home, stayed for a few more hours, came home and sat on my deck with my family, and we talked about what had happened. And I told my son, I said, you know what, I'm going to call Chaz. I said because you were, when I was preparing to go speak to the judges, I remember coming into your office when you were at the AG's office, and I just popped in, and you had like files like piled up all over the place on your desk. And it was like, come on in, Jane. It was like nothing bothered you. Just come in. You were so warm and welcoming. And yes, I do know you, but you know what? You're a busy guy. And you could have said, yo, you need to make an appointment, or I don't have time, come back tomorrow. You could have said that. And I would have said, okay, see ya. But you didn't. You came in, let me come in. We sat down and we talked about how I could get, because I wanted to go into the archives where the old records were kept. And you kind of gave me some ideas on how to go through that process. I actually think I wrote a motion that I wrote a motion myself that I presented in front of one of the judges, because I have, I'm not afraid of court. So, I spent a lot of time with DCYF in a courtroom, more
Oof.
times than I care to remember, but you helped me through that. And I remember walking out of there and I was like, that guy's got it all together. He's going places.
Oh,
You were so
thank you.
good. You were wonderful. And I've told you that a million times. I so appreciated what you did for me, because you didn't have to do that. But so I called you on, I think it was the 7th of that Monday. I called you the next day and explained to you what had happened at the Greenwich Club. And we had some conversations about what my options were. And I don't know, you want me to keep going, or do you want to?
Well, we can, at that point, you had given me basically the identical story of what you've just told everybody. And, we had talked about some of the options where you could go. I mean, um, did you want to pursue criminal charges? Because technically what had happened to you was a battery, regardless of what the state police might call it. But that was a battery, because the legal definition in Rhode Island of a battery is a unconsented touching or contact with another person, the person's body. Doesn't have to cause injury. It doesn't have to cause harm. So that could have been a criminal or civil battery. And ultimately, if I remember correctly, we decided that we wanted to bring it to the East Greenwich Police, because we believed it to be in East Greenwich, the Greenwich Club, although it does straddle the line there with Warwick, in that strange kind of like area near the Potawatomi line. But we went to the East Greenwich. We made an appointment to go into the East Greenwich Police so you could make a complaint about the actions of this Warwick police officer, and who also happened to be the vice president of the board at the Greenwich Club. And I think we sat down there we went in there expecting to speak to the East Greenwich Police, right?
I was.
Yes.
And
I
I'll
was
just tell
too.
you this, just walking into that police station for me was more traumatic, because all of my other stuff with the West Warwick police that I had to deal with for my assault, going to the police station for something like that was just very devastating for me. I mean, I can put on a good face, but let me tell you something. It was bad for me that day. It was bad.
And I knew that. I could see it in you. And I think I think things got worse progressively that day when we walked into the East Greenwich Police Department, and they told us, well, we're not really so sure that it could have been Warwick, it could have been East Greenwich, even though they pulled out a map and asked you to point on that map of the Greenwich Club, the parking lot of the Greenwich Club, where the battery happened. And you pointed, and they said, oh, that would be East Greenwich, but out of an abundance of caution, we preemptively called the state police, and they're going to come down here and meet with you. So I think we waited for about a half an hour or so, and 2 detectives from the state police came down, took your statement, and said they would be in touch with us, essentially. Correct?
That's correct. And, in their defense, I think they were from the Special Victims Unit, I think.
Yes, because I think they had originally saw this as based on where you were touched. You had said that
Mhm.
you had been, you felt that you had been grabbed in the buttocks. They were looking at this originally from a sexual assault
Mhm.
perspective, and I think as you told what had happened, they were able to determine this would probably be more of a simple battery perspective. And that's just simple not being less important, but simple being the name of the statute that it would apply, simple battery. So they did send, I think what they call basically our special victims unit detectives down, and they took your statement, they talked to you, and um, we waited, if I remember correctly.
We waited
We waited for a very long time. If
and
I,
we waited.
yes, and there was no, apparently they did an investigation because there was a report later that we did find out that was generated.
Mhm.
They did do an interview some people, which is how we came to find out that this officer used his foot to kick you as opposed to grab you as the way you felt it. Of course, you
And
weren't
can I
looking.
just say,
Yeah,
I had my back, so I couldn't tell you if he used, I can tell you what it felt like,
right,
but I couldn't tell you what object it was, if he used a ruler or what. I'm just saying, I couldn't tell because I didn't see it. I
right,
felt it.
right. And you can only talk about what you actually felt.
Right.
And that was, and you said that, and you were very honest about that, in my opinion. I was sitting there with you during that interview. And they, they did follow up and they were able to confirm through witness statements that you were in fact kicked while you had your back turned. Um, however, they eventually called one of them, not one of the ones who interviewed you. They had
Mhm.
somebody else call me to originally ask if you'd be willing to meet with them again. This
Right.
was, I think this was 3 or 4 months after, it might have been even longer than that. It might have been 3 or 4 months after you had made the complaint to the state police, and they wanted to meet with you again. And I asked directly this detective why. I said, is there something that's missing? Do you need additional information? What's going on? And she was very cagey about it. She was very cagey. And when I finally asked her directly, I said, if you're just here to tell me that you're not going to file charges, you can just do that over the phone and not insult my client. We can do that now. And she's like, well, I think you understand where we're going with this. Um, Basically telling me that they weren't interested in pressing charges. Be, but they did offer to meet with you,
They did.
and they did send not only this detective that was speaking to me on the phone, they sent her and Major Kramer, who was one of the um, command staff at the Rhode Island State Police. To
Lucky
my,
me.
yeah, one of the command staff of the
Major
state
Robert
police.
Kramer. I have
Yes,
his name right here in my letter.
I know.
I
They
take good notes.
you took very comprehensive notes. They sent them both to my office to meet with us to explain to you, I guess, why they came to a decision that there will be no criminal charges pressed against this officer. And how did you take it? Before I give my take on it, I want to know, how did you hear their explanation?
So I just got to go back a little bit
Yeah,
because
sure.
I wrote to Peter Nerona, who I'm not a fan of anymore. Even though I had a lawn sign when he was running before, I had a lawn sign with his name on it on my lawn. And I even told him that in one of the 2 letters that I'd written him. I wrote him a letter on August 20th, asking him for a face-to-face meeting in his office, because I was not happy with the way this case was going, and I wanted him to explain to me some things that didn't make sense from the meeting in your office with Detective or Major Robert Kramer.
Right. So you had sent that after they had explained to you that they didn't feel it was criminal charges were warranted because this officer did not intend to cause you any harm.
I believe
when
they
he
said it
made
was a de
contact.
minimis complaint.
Actually, that was the word that the assistant attorney general used in a meeting that
Oh,
I had with him. Because I actually, before they had made a decision, I had actually taken it upon myself to kind of try to get answers to where this case was going from the assistant attorney general who had been assigned to review the state police report. And that assistant attorney general described it as a de minimis type of action. Uh, and he tried to walk back those words, saying, I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying it's a de minimis type of action. And
hmm.
I left that meeting that day. There had been no decision made, but he said he'd be in touch. And of course, he did not get back in touch with me. They sent the state police to meet with both you and I. And at that point, I think it was the time that you, when they told us that, this was not going to go forward, and they sit there and let you listen, they let you talk. And they just said, I'm really sorry to say it, but nothing's going to happen. That was basically the tone of the meeting.
Yeah, and I said to them, I said, this seems to me like this is a case, an instance of police protecting police. And Major Kramer was a little angry with me and told me that I insulted him.
Mhm.
And I didn't really care if I insulted him because I felt insulted. I was 65, a month shy of 66. I'm 4'11". I'm a senior citizen. I got kicked in the rear end by a police officer who knew of my trauma history, and it's not important,
They
really.
certainly, that was the tone that I got out of the meeting. And just for the record, Major Kramer's legal analysis, he's not a lawyer, by the way. His legal analysis was 100% wrong. And that was actually confirmed, I think, later, which we'll get to, when you did get to meet with one of the chief of the criminal division of Peter Norona's office,
Mhm.
that Major Kramer's legal interpretation of the crime of battery was incorrect. There is no requirement that the unconsented contact, cause any harm in order to constitute the crime of battery. So, you said you sent a letter to Peter Noroni. You sent that by mail?
I sent it by registered mail, and I'm very good at my record keeping. I have all of my little receipts up here.
Wow.
I have everything because when I worked for DCYF, I learned how to be very organized, and I am. So yes, I did send him a letter requesting, and I sent him a little over a 2-page letter. I really tried to cut it down a little because I know he's a busy man, and I know he probably didn't even read it. I'm sure somebody else read it. But I took a lot of time to write it. And I explained my position and my meeting with the state police. And he never gave me a meeting.
Did he respond to you in any way? Did you even get a letter with his
Nothing.
name on it?
I got nothing. I actually even tried to call his victim advocate, and I was looking for her name. Of course, as organized as I am, I'm not going to say her name, but I did call his victim advocate. And she actually, when I went to speak at a conference, it was a training for the Attorney General's office, probably back in 2011. This particular woman, I worked with her to find out exactly what she wanted me to talk about. And I said, oh, maybe I hope she remembered me, but she never called me back. I called her twice. I did finally end up speaking to another woman who was very nice, and she did try to help me. She told me that she was the Attorney General's victim advocate, and she told me that, I just have a little note here, that the Attorney General can swear to a complaint and bring charges themselves.
Yeah, and that is actually factually accurate. Anyone who's an assistant attorney general or higher can actually swear to a criminal complaint themselves without a police officer doing it. Although it's not the norm, I'll say that right now, but that is a legal possibility. It was something that was done, I saw done several times when I worked at the Attorney General's office. And, I know that following your letter to Peter Nerona, that there was some acknowledgement from one of his assistants that came to me that said, we received a phone call from Ms. Johnson. Because you represent her, we're not going to return the phone call, but we wanted to make you aware. So I made you aware.
Yes.
And you decided, I think we both decided that you wanted your opportunity to meet with whoever they would send to meet with you.
Yes.
And that turned out to be the chief of the criminal division, Stephen Danbrook, and Assistant Attorney General John Corrigan.
Yes.
And they met with you without me. I did not want to make this about me because obviously I'm an announced candidate to be the Attorney General. So I wanted to make this about you and give you the opportunity to tell them the story without my being a distraction in that case. And you did get to tell them that story, right?
Yes. And I did. I brought a friend of mine who was a business manager at DCYF, who's retired. I brought her with me to, kind of be a witness to what was said and to take some notes from me. So I have all of my notes from them. And I asked Stephen Danbrook, if I'm saying his name right, if he had seen Nerona, the letter I sent to Nerona, and he said he had not, but John had. John, what's his name?
John Corrigan.
John Corrigan also told me he remembered me from because he sat in on my trial, so he knew who I was. Stephen Danbrook told me that he had had several discussions back and forth with the Rhode Island State Police, and he told me that the state police had the final say on misdemeanor charges. He said that there was sufficient evidence for a battery charge. He said but it was a close call. And I said, okay. He told me that the AG did have the authority to swear to bring a complaint to charge themselves. But the state police said there was no criminal intent. They also told me that they would contact the Warwick Police Department because there was another witness at the Greenwich Club who the state police never interviewed, who I had given them their name, and the AG said that they would look into that, but they never contacted that witness because I asked her and they never got back to me. They also he also told me that I could file a civil suit if I wanted to.
The standard brush off that I saw. The standard brush off that I saw in that office more times than I care to count.
Mm-hmm.
It was, in my opinion, it was the ultimate slap in the face, the way they handled that. They admitted that there was enough evidence to bring charges. They admitted that they themselves, the attorneys general, could swear to the complaint, bring the charges. But for some reason, and for the life of me, I don't know what that reason is, they decided to be subordinate to the state police. Let me just make sure everybody understands this. The state police are not lawyers. The state police are law enforcement officers. They can make an arrest, but when they make an arrest, misdemeanor or felony, that charge goes and is prosecuted by the Attorney General's office. So the Attorney General is responsible for all prosecutions brought by the state police. Doesn't make a difference whether or not the state police think that charge is important or not. They don't have to make the arrest. The state police should be taking their direction from the Attorney General. And the fact that the Attorney General did not give that direction that they admitted was appropriate was the most, in my opinion, one of the most troubling things that I've seen in my career. And I've been doing this for 16 years.
In one of my notes, and I'll read it to you, the AG told me that Attorney General does doesn't bring misdemeanor charges 99.9% of the time. And they said that it was up to the state police if they were going to charge.
Well, that's factually incorrect. They were playing word games with you. So when they said they don't bring them, that's just a way to say, well, we're not the ones who usually file the complaints. They're always the ones who prosecute them when the state police brings them. That was just a way of saying, well, we don't usually write out the complaint, although they have the authority to do so. So that was it's something that I found to be very consistent with Peter Nerona himself, playing cute with words in order to justify their actions, which
Well,
they know.
speaking of Peter Nerona, I wrote Peter Nerona another letter on October 8th, which I sent registered. And I outlined my meeting that was an hour and a half long with the attorneys at the AG's office. And I outlined everything that I was told. Again, I asked him to please let me come in, and I wanted a face-to-face meeting with him so I could have him explain to me, because I didn't get it. I just felt nobody was protecting me. I was a victim of a crime, whether it's murder or or if it's a horrible, horrible crime, but it was a horrible crime to me. No matter what anybody thinks, it was awful to me. And my whole world that day fell apart, and nobody really wanted to listen to me except you and my therapist and my doctors. Nobody got it. They didn't get it there. And that, for me, said it all. Peter Nerona never replied to me. The Attorney General told me that I could go to the Warwick Police Standards Office,
The professional standards.
Professional
office.
Standards Review. So we did do that. Do you want me to tell that story?
Yeah, we can, I think that's one of the positives that came out of this, is that you were seen by members of the Professional Standards Division of the Warwick Police Department at the direction of the police chief. They took your statement, they listened to everything you had to say, did their own investigation, and decided that professional misconduct, a charge of professional misconduct was going to be sustained against this officer. And, he didn't lose his job, but you never asked for him to lose his job. You never asked for him to, you weren't thinking that this person was going to go to jail, or you weren't asking for the maximum penalties under the law. I think you at one point simply said, if he had just said, hey, Jane, you know what? I acted like an idiot. I'm sorry. I think you said that would have been something that you could have accepted.
He never came over to me that day at the Greenwich Club and apologized to me. If anything, he tried to intimidate me all summer. He would stand up on the deck near the door of the club with his arms folded. And I know how people intimidate other people. I've been in this business for a long time. I felt very intimidated by him. And I was very happy with the Warwick Police Department, what they did. I felt that they validated my claim. As a matter of fact, I wrote to the police chief after and thanked him for the professionalism of the Warwick Police Department. I even sent the mayor of the Warwick Police Department a letter telling them how grateful I was for this professional standards review, because Peter Nerona did nothing for me except turn his back on me, and is a victim of a previous violent crime, and is a victim of this battery crime. There will be no Peter Nerona lawn sign on my lawn this year. I will tell you that.
Well, I mean, I'm laughing, Jane, but unfortunately it's a sad situation, because here you have this man, Peter Nerona. We see him now day in and day out, advocating for the victims of crime, the victims of violent crime. He's at the State House, pushing for, I'm not asking you to weigh in on, the partisan bills that are being heard at the State House, but, we see him up there all the time saying, we need to fight for victims.
Mhm.
Where was he when you were the victim once again, of a crime? Where was he, when you needed him? There are people that go through that office. There are victims of crime that come through that office day in and day out, whose, their case is the most important thing in their life. And as this was in your life, not everybody has to go through, a murder or a sexual assault or something along those lines. They shouldn't have to go through that to get the attention of our chief law enforcement officer. And the fact that he let you languish for as long as you did, the fact that he didn't even give you so much as a automatic reply email
A letter.
or a
Nothing.
form letter with a stamp of his signature, couldn't even have his assistant call you back. It's unacceptable. It goes to he's been in the highest levels of government for so long that he's really become comfortable with the idea that he's inaccessible to the public for the most part. And we've seen it recently with some of the unfortunate tragedies we've seen, not only in East Greenwich, Warwick, with the drunk driving cases, the reckless driving cases where people have been killed. It's taken public campaigns to get him to even respond to families, to victims. It's an ongoing problem. So to hear him get up in the State House, and I'm sorry if I'm going on my soapbox here.
That's okay.
You hear him go up at the State House and go on and on about how we have to protect Rhode Islanders from needing to protect victims of crime from this is galling compared to the way he treated you and compare the way he's treated other families of victims of crime just in this last year alone. And that doesn't even count the last 2.5 years prior to that. I mean, that's not the way the Attorney General's office works. He's supposed to be fighting for you to protect Rhode Islanders. I'm angry for you.
Well, I'm not finished yet. Yeah. I have an axe to grind here. I am a fighter. I'm an advocate. And, a lot of people said, well, why did you have to take this so far? And I said, take it so far. I said, I stand up for people who don't have a voice. And if I didn't, this incident happened to me, which brought me my trauma right back to where it was in 2003. And I'm on medication. I'm going to therapy every week. I'm treating with my physician, with a gastroenterologist. This incident has really affected me and my family. It's taken me right back.
And that's not uncommon, as you were telling us at the beginning.
But I have to do this. Like I'm a fighter. I have to fight, and I'm going to continue this fight. And I have people at the Greenwich Club who were my friends who don't even speak to me now. You know what they say to me? Why are you doing this? He has a family to support. He could lose his job. And I said to this one person, I said, if he did that to your daughter, would it be okay? And this person said, no.
It's everybody has their own little agenda until you put it in perspective that they can understand, like you just did very well, that don't upset me in my little paradise over there at the Greenwich Club, because it's going to affect my life negatively. But what happened to you, Jane? What about you? Why aren't you allowed to seek justice for yourself? You're going to get justice, because we're going to make sure of that.
They'll say, why did you go back there? If this bothered you so much, why did you go back there? And I said, very simple, honest answer. I've summered there for years. I summer with my grandchildren. I summer with my daughter there. And I'm not going to let anybody kick me out of there. Do I feel uncomfortable there? Absolutely. Is it hard for me to walk through that gate? You have no idea. I think I've been there twice since the club opened. But I have to pull myself together and fight to go there every day. And I'm going to do my best. I'm trying to get there because how do I explain to my grandchildren, no, I'm going to go to the beach today because I am not comfortable at the Greenwich Club because of what this man did. But you have to go to the Greenwich Club and swim in the pool, and I can't be there.
Well, I completely understand that, and in my opinion, you're doing the right thing. Don't let anybody drive you away from something that you love because of them trying to intimidate you out of there.
Yeah.
That's a sad situation.
Not going to happen.
No, I know it's not going to happen. I know I've known you for too long to know that that's definitely not going to happen.
Yeah. Not gonna
And I applaud you, and I know that we're going to help you get the justice that you deserve. But I think people should know that this man masquerading around as fighting for victims of crime over at the State House and at 150 South Main Street over there at the Attorney General is a phony.
Mhm.
He's not fighting for you. He's not fighting for anybody. He fights for what's politically expedient for him. You weren't important enough, Jane. You weren't important
No,
enough
and
to get his attention.
I have a
his attention.
cousin who's a very high-ranking politician in the state. I'm not going to say who it is. And I could have called my cousin and said, hey, can you make a call for me? I would not do that. I am not a name dropper. I wanted to see what he would do as a regular citizen who was reaching out to him for help and for some guidance on something that happened to me without having to say, hey, that person, I'm related to that person. He didn't.
Didn't want to have to use that Rhode Island connection.
I'm not important enough. I wasn't important enough to Peter Nerona.
You're not, and unfortunately, you're not the only one. And
Yeah.
but I know that he won't be here. This is not the last he's going to be hearing from you. And it certainly won't be the last he's going to be hearing from me.
I hope he sees this podcast.
I'm sure he's got his people watching in one way, shape, or form. And if anyone's watching this, I think the point of this, other than to tell your story and to share your experiences of the injustices of our system and the injustice that the Attorney General puts you through, is to show that the Attorney General is not there to fight your battles. The Attorney General is there for his own job security and to do whatever political aspirations he may have going in the future. And unfortunately, Jane, you just didn't fit into his plans.
I think he forgot where he came from.
He did, because I think when he announced his run for Attorney General back in 2018, I believe it was, people were talking about what a great job he did as the U.S. Attorney. He's going to come in and he's going to turn that office around. There had been a lot of complaints under the Kilmartin administration that they were all sure that Peter Nerona was going to turn this around. And I think he did forget where he came from. I think he forgot what his role is, and he's politicized the office now to such an extent that he forgets that he's there to fight for victims of crime instead of political positions, which is an absolute perversion of the mission of that office.
I know you will never forget where you came from.
No, because I would never put myself
My
above.
CCD
That's
catechism
right.
class.
You taught me very well, Gene, and
Bless
more
you.
importantly, I know that I am not the most important person. Even if I were to win the Attorney General's race this year, I am not the most important person in that building. The most important people that come through that system are the people like you who are looking for justice and looking to have their stories heard by somebody who will give them their day, will give them their fair shot, and let their voices be heard. Unfortunately, you weren't given the opportunity, but you will be. You will be given that opportunity.
I hope so. And I hope that if I get a chance to get my case back into court against him and a judge makes that decision, that whatever it may be, I can live with that. I could live with the decision from the judge, but I can't live with the decision made for me from the Attorney General's office.
Not when they tell you that there was enough evidence to charge. If they had come back and said, Jane, there was not enough, we just don't have enough to bring the case. And you and I talked about it, and I said, Jane, unfortunately that they would have been right. That's another story, but that's not
Right.
what they said.
Right.
That's not what they said. And you told them from day one, bring it to court. If there's a not guilty, it's a not guilty. I
Right.
can live with that.
I could.
You
Like, I
did.
could have lived with an apology.
And I think this was another example of them being afraid to try the difficult cases.
Mhm.
It was not going to be easy for them. It was going to be a prosecution of a police officer, which surprised me because he's gone after the police on any other occasion that he's had the opportunity. But this time,
Maybe they're related.
I don't know. I personally, I don't know.
Rhode
It's
Island.
possible. You never know. In Rhode Island, you never know. But it was shocking because any other opportunity he's had, he's certainly taken his opportunities to go after them. But in this case, he didn't. And maybe it was just because he thought that you weren't important enough to get him in any political trouble. So, Jane, I really appreciate you coming on tonight and telling everybody who's watching this about what you've gone through, your background, who you are, why your story is important, and most importantly, why they can't count on our Attorney General to be the advocate for victims that he claims to be.
Well, I know you're going to win this election. I know.
I know that if I do win this election, there will be major changes in that office and things like you will get responses, you will be heard, and you will be respected. Not just you, anybody who comes before that office will be respected and heard when they bring concerns to my office. So I appreciate your support. This is not about me though. This is about you, and this was about the failings of Attorney General Noronha. And I, it takes a lot of courage to come and bare your soul to anybody who's watching here online to tell your story. And I'm glad you did, because I think people needed to hear it.
Yep. And I'm not afraid of him.
Nor should you
Peter
be.
Noronha.
Nor
Bring
should
it
you
on.
be.
I'd love to come and sit in your office and have a chat.
I
I don't think I'm going to get invited.
don't think so either, because apparently he doesn't like to have any confrontations.
No,
So
2 letters. Nah.
no, I would say not.
Yeah.
But Jane, we really appreciate it. And then if you want to tell people about where they can reach you, if they're interested in your organization, Survivors Rhode Island, how they can get in touch with you, and what kind of services you offer.
Yep. So we are Survivors Speak Rhode Island. You can reach us at our website, which is www.survivorsspeakri.org. All our information is there on the website. You can read everything there. I've kind of gone over everything, what we do there, and read some of our success stories. And hopefully somebody out there watching would like us to come in and do some training for them. We'd love to do that.
Yeah, and I hope people will take you up on that offer, because this is a service that is needed not only in the law enforcement
COVID's killed
community.
us. I'll just tell you that.
It killed a lot of people, and that's for another show. That's another day where the Attorney General failed our state, but
Right.
that's another issue for another show. So I hope people will take you up on that offer. And Jane, I hope you'll come back and see us again on a future episode.
I will, when you're Attorney General. I'm going to come to your party.
Well, that does it for another episode of Chaz Calenda, Attorney at Law, here on the Coalition Talk Radio. I'm Chaz Calenda. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Inman and Torgy, 1500 Nooseneck Hill Road in Coventry, 401-823-9200. I'm also an announced candidate to be the next Rhode Island Attorney General. If you're interested in my campaign, you can find me online at CHAS4AG, that's CHAS, the number 4AG.com, where you can learn about me, volunteer your time, and donate to help me become the next Attorney General of Rhode Island. Thank you again for all of you who joined us here on the Coalition Talk Radio, and we'll see you on the next episode of Chaz Calenda, Attorney at Law. Thanks, Jane, and have a good night.
Thanks.